Talking to our legislators and want to make sure our voice is heard from Manchester and the mountains to Montpelier. Welcome to the Chamber Connection. This is a special edition of our show. I'm Berta McGinnis, Executive Director, Manchester and the Mountains Regional Chamber of Commerce, connecting people and businesses throughout our 18-town community. We're going to talk today about something you're reading about, hearing your neighbors talk about, may have questions about, and it's called the Partnership. The Partnership is a successor organization to the Chamber, effective July 2016. But before I get ahead of myself in giving you details, I want to bring in my guest today, who is Seth Bongartz, President of Hildene, and who has been alongside our process, and it has been a process.
It has been a process.
In October of 2014, the board of directors of our chamber took a look at what we were doing, how we were doing it, and realized we needed a new business model, which is when you entered our picture. So play that back for us just a little bit.
Well, you and the board approached me and asked me and Lane Dunham, the vice president of Hildene, to lead the chamber through a process, to sort of act as facilitators.
Yes.
And help the board really reinvent itself. It's, in a way, it's not quite what happened, but you could say blow up what was there and think about it totally from scratch. And of course, not everything got blown up because the chamber, as we know it, is still there and will be within the larger organization. But so what we did is that we set up a process of about, I can't remember if it was 12 or 14, one of those two, meetings where we had different focus groups come in. You know, it might have been lodging owners, it might have been restaurants, it might have been other kinds of businesses. It was schools,
other nonprofits,
other nonprofits, yep. and then one or two catch-all meetings just for anybody who could come to really help think through, in a way, not just what the new chamber might look like, but what the larger community wanted. Where it is we're headed, what it is we're trying to achieve, and what came out of those meetings, and I thought the thing that was amazing about it was every single time exactly the same thing said, which was that we need the chamber-like function to help focus on the tourism part of our market with our 18 towns, as it always has, but actually do it much better and to professionalize and take that to another level. But what everybody said is we also need underneath of that a really strong economic base. And so what came out of this is because no matter how well you focus on tourism, it's always to some extent going to go up and down. And the real thing that came out every time was we need underneath of that, and as much as we need to focus on that, and as much as what's driven our economy for a long time, we need a really strong business base underneath of that with opportunity for young people, and be it small manufacturing or internet-dependent businesses, all of those things. And so the want was for the chamber to add really a second focus of focusing on economic development on an appropriate scale and consistent with what this area is and what it's about.
Well, and we began some of that when we made the move to our current visitor center. When we moved to the Visitor Welcome Center and became a 7-day-a-week operation, we realized that we would see more people, tell the story of our communities more. And so that was kind of the first step, in a way, as we look back now. We didn't know it then. I think my
understanding is from you, that's been very successful.
It's been very successful. We initially were seeing 1,700 people just across from Adams Park, and we now see upwards of 14,000 guests a year that come into the chamber. Many don't have any idea what we really have here, and so the assets of the region become our story to these folks. And so this is going to take us to the next level, as you said, with our economic base. I mean, realizing that we do have the makings of, all of the good things about Vermont, and we want to keep that authenticity and grow those businesses and grow businesses alongside of those businesses that are good jobs that will retain some of our young people. And we hear that young people are leaving. Actually, there's
it's coming as well.
Sense that they're coming as well.
Yep.
We have the Young Professionals Group, which is part of our chamber. So the first work of the focus groups then led us to deciding what sort of a structure we were going to put together. And that led us to the public-private side of things. Alongside regional, we know that
Yes.
public-private works well.
So there's really two pieces, regional and
two
public-private.
It is two pieces. And in order to do that, we had to decide how one might put together the public funding mechanism of the organization. And that took some looking at a number of factors in order to make it fair.
Well, one of the things that's great, I think, is that as this got put together and you and the other board members reached out to members of the community, early funding came in, really perhaps even better than I think you might have expected it to. So there was some early funding that allowed the chamber to put some of these wheels in motion a little bit. And one way to think about all of this is that there was some seed money from the private sector to get this up and off the ground. The next phase now is to have the 18 towns really partially as a show of support, as well as helping with some dollars,
yes.
To put in some public money. And the real point is that the public money between the 18 towns is $75,000,
Correct.
which on the one hand, it's a lot of money, it'd be very helpful. Broken across the towns, of course, it's not huge town by town, and it's all done proportionally, and you can talk about that. But the real point is that this is what it's going to take to, in turn, leverage that much more private money because of that show of support locally. Will leverage more money and really allow this to get to the point that it needs to get, because as we've talked about, economic development is a long-term strategy.
It is.
And B, requires serious, well-trained, well-experienced professionals. So there is some cost to it. But as we look at when the Southern Vermont Economic Development Report that Wayne Grenquist chaired, commissioned by the legislature, and as you recall, the headline was "Urgent Action Needed,"
which is
the situation in
the
these
song we were singing.
Yeah,
as
these
well.
two counties is dire, and so what was great about the timing of this, I think, is that well prior to that report, and I think people kind of knew it instinctively, we were collectively, that you and the board and others were working to put this in motion and get it ready. That report comes out really saying, yes, this is exactly what we need to do, and we were at that point positioned to do it. So it's and then we had the second thing is that it turns out you and I were both on
Right,
this,
the steering
North Shire
committee.
Economic
Yeah.
Development Steering Committee. Well, that report, you can talk about that too in a second. The report about to come out on Thursday night, and everybody hopefully from these communities coming to listen to it at Long Trail School. In fact, both select boards are going to meet as select boards,
exactly,
the two
to
local
receive
ones.
the results.
But the real point of this is that this is the possibility to take that report, to take both of those reports, and actually for our 18 towns, bring them to life so they're not just another round of reports and studies that go on a shelf. We're ready collectively, all of us, and hopefully these communities are all ready to take it forward.
Well, and it was coincident, the timing, because as we began in October 2014. The NED strategy group began in March of 2015. The Governor's Commission began meeting, the Wayne's group began meeting in June and reported out in December, which, as you said, was just when we were saying, it's time for us to take this to our select boards, which is why we, had to have the fair share document, which we worked that through with looking at grand list, looking at retail numbers, looking at rooms, meals, and alcohol, population. And then we blended all of that together to come up with a percentage by town. As you say, it's not the money necessarily as it is the support and the realization from our smaller communities that they can play in economic development. There is a way that you begin to get a spotlight.
In fact, we need them.
And we need them because we need
the region.
We need certain things in Manchester. We need certain things in Paulet, Arlington, Sunderland, all of
over the
these.
Mountain.
Yeah, I mean, there's something in every one of our communities that can be appealing as we really, begin to put out our position paper on who we are. And so, to get the folks in our communities to realize that this is an investment, and an investment that if the investment is $2,000 in your town, it can come back to you as $200,000 over a period of time.
And that's true on a couple levels, right? Because it's true the way you just said it. It's also true that the investments from the communities will in turn leverage significantly more private money. So it's almost like seed money. It's a great bargain, is one way to put it. It's seed money that leverages a lot more and will really make it possible to put the pieces in place to both professionalize the marketing that we do, or the outreach that we do for the tourism industry, raise that to another level, and also add this level of economic development. And that's what I think, when you and I and others went to the various select boards,
we were very well received.
The reception was uniformly, I think, very positive, and with people saying, yes, this is what we need to do. This needs to happen. And of course, it's now going to be up to the voters. But I think my own view is this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, because there is such a thing as the stars being aligned. And the stars are aligned right now, and they don't always get aligned. Both because the Chamber positioned itself to take this on at just the right time, and then the reports, both out of the Sunderland Economic Development and then the NED study, all saying, in essence,
this
is what we need to do, and this is the only organization that's going to carry it forward. So it's really critical, and I just think this is one of those times when, another way to put it is that, we complain about it, about the lack of opportunity. We complain about these things, and this is one of those times where we're going to have to make a choice. We either just keep complaining about it, or we actually do something.
Because no one's going to do it for us.
No one's going to do it for us. You can talk about the legislature forever, and maybe there'll be, maybe yes, a little bit here or there, maybe, but in the end, it's fundamentally our issue to solve.
And it's our region to bring to life.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the seed money, and I want to go back to that because we did have generous response to that. Almost initially, we announced in September that this was going forward and that we would need some seed money to get certain things in place just because of the timing. We knew the public funding cycle centered around town meeting, but because we were successful, we went to the New York Times travel show, which we've not done before, but it is one piece of what we will do with the new organization and the enhancement of our tourism marketing. And that was a show that had 30,000 people coming through. And we just happened to be next to Cabot cheese, and everybody loves Cabot cheese. So while you're standing in line getting Cabot cheese, you say, when was the last time you visited Vermont? And that begins the conversation.
And then the other piece of that is the economic development piece underneath of that. So what you're talking about is being able to do things more effectively with bringing people here in the first place. And then I've heard you talk before about when people come into the Chamber and they're talking about locating their business here or thinking about it or expanding their business, or locals trying to get something going, you don't have the ability to really follow through at this point. And this is really about setting you up with an economic development professional, actually the first hire we're talking about, to allow you to really follow through and help make it happen.
Right.
And I think that's pretty exciting.
Well, it's very exciting. And people do come into the Chamber. I mean, they come here for tourism. They love it here. They want to figure out how they can, A, move their business here, B, they're educating kids in schools at very expensive rates that realize they could have really good schools here. Yeah. And so it all fits together. Excuse me. But the first hire does have to be someone who is experienced in economic development. The way you respond to those sorts of inquiries is very important because oftentimes they come to you anonymously. They also don't happen overnight. I mean, it is, as you said, it is a long-term initiative. If you have a small company looking at the area or looking to even expand an investment that they already have here, they need answers to a lot of things, and they need someone who is working closely with our municipalities. There may be some needs for rezoning of certain things that, you know, can be easily done if you're working with a planning commission, with a select board in a particular area. And we see those things happening. I mean, we see recently the Wilcox facility that's come to life, and that took, you know, they had to do a lot of that themselves. But and they were Vermonters and they figured it out. But if you had someone coming from nearby state that didn't have all of that background, I'm not so sure that, you know, without this kind of help and without really dedicated resolve to it, that we would get those kinds of folks. And that's what we need here. The other thing that we need in terms of the tourism marketing is that when we began this, we realized our community is undergoing great change. We've just increased the bed base in our community by dramatically. I mean, 50%. And in order to fill that, that doesn't just happen with individual tourists. That happens with groups, conventions, small associations, and we're now large enough with our bed base to attract more of the group marketplace, and with what is coming over the next 15 months. And that's a marketing all its own, because you have to go out and present your destination, not just your one property or your attraction, Hildene. You present the whole community.
The whole area, the whole larger community, the whole area.
So that you attract that group, they come here, you know, they're looking for a spouse program. It can be in the greenhouse at Hildene. It can be up at the Art Center. I mean, we don't have to invent those things because we already have them. They're in place here. And so we've just, you know, put ourselves into another market that we have to go out and get.
Which in turn raises more possibilities for the economic development, because they really go nicely together. Because if people come and they want to be here, it's the ability to follow through is what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes, you know, it takes an investment. We hope that the voters are paying attention to what is being said. I know there's lots of information out there, and I see on Facebook people saying, you know, you're already paying dues to the chamber. What's going to happen to that? Well, if you're already paying dues to the chamber, you'll be paying dues to the partnership.
And the same thing will be, the same chamber function will continue to happen.
Yes, the same chamber function.
Like a little donut hole within the larger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The donut hole will still be the visitor welcome center. Your collateral will still be on the shelves. We'll still be answering questions and sending leads. If you're one of our inns or bed and breakfasts or the Hildene that want to go with us on trade missions and travel missions, which we will be doing increasingly with the state from the tourism side, then, you know, there'll be an additional fee to play in that.
You know, one of the things that was interesting, I'm just changing a little tiny bit, was as we went through these processes with the committees, is even I began, who knew it, I guess, realized all over again how much this area has to offer, because we started those meetings by sort of collectively inventorying some of the things that make it such a great, you know, how close the Albany Airport actually is, for instance, and of course the natural beauty, the heritage, the history,
quality of life,
and the sense of community, the great schools, and it made me realize all over again how much this area really does have to offer. We can sometimes begin to think, oh, others are going to go, like, you know, the Chittenden County is going to pass us by, and we all began to collectively realize, wait a minute.
We don't want to be Chittenden County.
Number one, we don't want to be Chittenden County. Whatever we're talking about here is appropriate to this area, who we are, our heritage, our history, our scale. But it's also that this is an area with incredible potential. And there's no reason in the world this area can't be the, you know, if not the, let's say the most successful area in the state of Vermont. We have everything that we need to do it. We just have to, we've just never taken this step, I think is part of it. And there's been all kinds of studies and over the years and little things getting started and then not going. This is really the first time, and more than one person has said this, that we've really got it pulled together. If we can now just stick together as these communities, get these amounts of money into the budget, get it passed, and then have this thing take off.
Yes.
And I think it can.
Well, I think it can too, and as you said, I mean, it's been talked about, and there's been this drumbeat throughout southern Vermont. The Bennington County Regional Commission was actually the facilitator of the NED's
Yep.
work, which worked very well. They have now rolled up their BCIC into BCRC, and we're all working together. And I think and that is the key to it, is unifying our region, realizing that if you travel around Vermont at all, we are lucky. I mean, we have $100 million of business investment in this region right now over the past year, 2 years. I mean, that's a huge amount.
Yep.
for the size of our communities. And it's just, now we're just waiting to capitalize on it. And the vote is going to be very important to us. Will we go ahead without the vote? Yes, we will, but we'll have a different focus.
It'll be much harder. This is one time. This just needs to happen.
This is a
We need
one-time in a lifetime. And as you said, the stars are aligned, and we hope that if people still have questions, they'll call the chamber, they'll come in, sit down, happy to visit with anybody who would really like to find out more that you're not seeing. I hope people will come out to meetings that are happening over the next month in preparation for town meeting.
Yeah, one of the things that another thing I thought was interesting was when we've talked about a little bit, when we went to those select board meetings, we were at, as you know, in Vermont, every community is very different, even though we are a region, we know each other, these 18 towns. We think about ourselves as a region, but within that, of course, we're all still very different because every community is very different. But I thought what was remarkable was the way that the select boards, whether it was over the mountain or in Sunderland
or in
Arlington or Manchester, Dorset, all really got it and were supportive of us and sort of thanked us for the effort. And we're on all of these ballots. Some, a couple by petition, some by the select board doing it. Some, Dorset actually put us right into the budget.
Into the budget.
Because they were so excited about it. So I think the pieces are in place, and we just have to now. So I with you, urge the people who are listening to this and live in these 18 towns to do this piece of putting in that public money, so it can help us. First, we had the private initiative, now the public piece, and then from that, much greater investment from the private sector. So this is just a piece that we really need to make it work.
And the organization, the partnership will make it come to life July 1st, 2016. And we thank you all for your attention. And please, if you have questions, call me, call Seth. I'm not going to put your number on the screen, but we'd love to hear from you. We really value our communities and all the interest in this issue.
Actually, I don't mind if people call me. It's okay. It's 362-3996 is my direct line. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about this.
And thank you very much for your attention.